Welcome in everybody to another edition of our Bulls video mailbag series. Yes, it's the off season, but that does not mean that the questions have stopped. We'll be doing this feature periodically throughout the off season. And our first question this week comes to us from a longtime follower, Don Lon at _ball_in_my_hand. Is the seat of Artūras Karnišovas at least warm? Let's cut right to the chase, shall we? Now, Artūras was actually asked this question directly at his season-ending news conference and talked about how he and ownership are on the same page. And I think that needs to be underscored for a couple reasons. Number one, it's not like ownership lives in a vacuum here. They do meet periodically with basketball management throughout the season. They're abreast, obviously, of the plans, including the trade deadline deal of Zach LaVine. Billy Donovan is included in some of those meetings as well. And ownership, management, and the coaching staff, particularly Billy Donovan, have very strong relationships flowing throughout the organization. Number two, I've said this many times, but it's instructive to repeat. Jerry Krause, hired in 1985, no longer basketball operations chief in 2003. That's 18 years by my math. John Paxson, hired to succeed Jerry Krause in 2003, no longer basketball operations by his choice in 2020. That's 17 years. Artūras has a long runway here. Now, I know fans are very frustrated right now with the current state of the team, but this is just not ownership's MO when it comes to management regimes. They typically give them a lot of time and more than one or two roster iterations. And one more thing on this answer that fans are not going to want to hear, because this is year 5 entering year 6. This really is only his second roster iteration. I'm not being apologetic. I'm just stating a fact. This is where it's at. He inherited a roster from John and Gar. He blew it up in the summer of 2021 to early promising results before, again, fans are sick about hearing this, the Lonzo Ball knee injury. Now, you could absolutely argue that he took too long to pivot off that roster, and I made that argument myself many times. But now he is in the process of reforming this roster. You could also talk about whether or not the strategy to do that is flawed, because he's spelled it out very clearly. He is targeting young players with experience. This is not a managerial regime that is interested in bottoming out, and that's why they're picking 12th, or at least entering the draft lottery with the 12th best, poor odds to move up to the top 4, and likely picking 12th, and have the mostly same roster coming back next season. But to be clear, this is only his second roster iteration. So here is where ownership has put it to management. Fix this. They haven't told him you're fired or you're on the hot seat. They've just said, fix this. And so that's the process that Artūras and Mark Eversley and their staff are undertaking as we speak. All right, question number 2 comes from at MCD Riley97. Last time AK had all the Bulls first to trade, he traded for DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic. He has showed to not value first in trade returns. Should be looking out for an aggressive trade involving first this offseason, since he seems to value players more than first. Now, Artūras also was asked this question directly at his season-ending news conference, and he said, look, we're going to always explore all avenues, typical management speak, to improve the team, whether that be trade, draft, free agency, blah, blah, blah. Now, that said, they have been trumpeting the fact that they have reclaimed possession of all their own first since the moment that Zach LaVine trade went through. I personally will be stunned if they cash in those first-round picks this offseason. This, to me, now does seem a plan where you're going to try to retool this roster with good draft picks and obviously hope there's internal improvement from the young players on the roster. That was the quick fix when he first took over the roster. I do not see them playing that route again, especially because what did we hear from Artūras at the season-ending news conference? He asked fans for patience. What takes patience? First-round draft picks, not trading them for stars. So I personally think you're going to be seeing the Bulls use multiple of their draft picks in the coming years. All right, question number 3 comes to us from at 𝗦𝗫_Dragon, Rob Nelson. He's been hitting us up a lot lately with some good questions. We've been using him a lot. Miles Turner, Jonathan Kuminga, and Naz Reid could all be potential free agents. Should the Bulls target any of them? This is tied in a little bit to the previous question. What I heard from that season-ending news conference that Artūras performed was a management team that is, to me, focused on internal development and using their draft picks. I do not expect them to go big game hunting this offseason in free agency. They are going to have not only a trade exception available, but the mid-level exception. I do expect them to add some veteran help, but I think it's going to be more of the help on the margins type veteran help. And you're going to be mostly focused on internal improvement from guys like Coby White, 𝗭𝗏 𝗠𝗏, 𝗵𝗏 𝗟𝗏, and then obviously using the first and second round picks that the Bulls have at their disposal. If you add those 2 first-round picks, there are not a lot of roster spots left. So I'm thinking 1, possibly 2 people in free agency added at max to this roster. This is all assuming they don't make a trade, which I've said before is probably the best way to overhaul this roster this offseason. I don't think that's going to happen. So I would be surprised if any of these 3 names are on the Bulls next season. All right, our last question this week comes to us from @AlecJacoby_White, which is Coby White's real name, and I'm assuming this is not Coby White's burner account since it's called Bulls Poverty. 𝗙𝗍𝗋𝗋, how do we get a superstar? Is it time to trade for one or tank for one? Or how about develop one? Because we've seen that the Bulls were not interested in tanking for one this offseason, or I'm sorry, this past season, because the odds to get Cooper Flagg are 1.7 as we tape this. And look, we've talked about them probably, hoping for internal improvement and not playing the tank game next season when the 2026 draft also is considered by many scouts to be very strong. So that, to me, sounds like a team that's focused on developing a star from within. Obviously, 𝗵𝗏 𝗟𝗏 potentially has the highest ceiling. You could make a case for your namesake, Coby White or 𝗭𝗏 𝗠𝗏 as well. But that's really, to me, where the plan is for now. And then maybe potentially down the road in 2026, when you have more cap space available, maybe a trade opportunity presents itself then, or a free agency opportunity presents itself then to get a star. But it's certainly not in the tank mode. And the trade situation, at least this offseason, for a major star is very slim. If the Bulls are making a move, they will be trading maybe a guy like Nikola Vucevic and probably seeking draft capital in return with some young prospects. They're not going to be looking to clutter up their books with long-term money because, as I mentioned, they've got ample salary cap space in the summer of 2026. So right now, the plan is to develop a star from within. We'll see if that happens, and we'll also be coming back to you for more questions throughout the offseason. We'll be doing this feature, as I mentioned before, periodically. Thanks as always for your questions, and we'll catch you next time.